Hello, this is Aaron Albritton with The Independent Progressive. I'm here today with Johnny Akzam. He's running for Minnesota's 1st District in the House, and we are here to talk to him about what issues are important to him and why he's running. Johnny, how are you today?
I'm doing just great. How's it going with you?
Doing pretty well. Very glad to have you here. I am very interested in some of the things you're running on, and I saw some of your videos and thought they were interesting. I would love to hear your thoughts on some of them. So the first thing I'd like to ask you, just right off the bat, is why do you want to end federal funding for healthcare for federal employees?
I don't want to end it. No, I said I wouldn't accept my own until single payer is passed for all. Just my own. This was just it was like a campaign pledge saying, listen, because here's my problem. They sit up there and they make all these decisions for the populace while they have all this great health care. And we're fighting for Medicare for all. That's the logical and most fiscally responsible model. And, of course there's details, but overall, single payer Medicare for all is so if that's what you're talking about, is encouraging people. That was only me saying, hey, listen, I'm willing to reject my own health care until we've passed Medicare for all.
That makes a lot of sense. It's very interesting. I was watching the video and I saw that you had a Google Doc and a couple of other things trying to say that you were going to have people pledge. And I like the idea. Do you see that as an issue with a lot of other federal issues, such as wages or, funding to certain programs, anything like that?
Well, I can't say I've thought about that specifically. I do think wages is an issue. The House members make $174,000 a year. Senators make $192,000. That doesn't count all of these expenses and things that they can write off or whatever. I have no idea. And there's no doubt, I'm not going to play stupid here, that's going to be one of the highest paying jobs I've ever had. But I've worked pretty hard my life. I think I could handle it. However, I've been kind of interested in the socialist alternative method. I heard that, and I don't know this for a fact, this was only spoken about at a meeting by somebody, but I heard that the candidates pledged to only take the median salary, the median for their area. So like for here in Rochester, it's $68,000 a year. And that's really high, but that's because of the Mayo Clinic. So for instance, if a candidate were running socialist alternative, then they would only accept that much of their money and then give the rest to the cause. I don't know all the details, but I thought that was an interesting idea in how showing the candidates can show solidarity with their community instead of just turning into these rich fat cats when they get.
That makes a lot of sense. Out of curiosity, you mentioned that you were interested in the socialist perspective on that. Is that something, do you adhere to a lot of socialist perspectives in your worldview?
Yeah, I would say, considering the new bringing out of the definitions, I could say I'm a democratic socialist. I support the idea that we, as a government, as a collective government, it's our responsibility to ensure the needs of the very least among us. Because if we can't do that, then what good is the rest of our society? Because as we see what's been happening, the pockets get bigger and bigger and bigger. The wage gap gets further and further apart.
So I show that you mentioned on your website that you're running as an independent. Are you going to run, would the goal be for you to run against the other two parties and be?
Oh, I'm not sure if that's just something that hasn't been updated on the site. I registered originally as an independent in April. And then I went to the People's Summit in June and had a great 4 days there. Met a lot of people, talked to Nina Turner. I had some friends there as well. And I met this little guy, looks like a prospector. happened to be our CD1 vice chair of the Democratic, the DFL, Democratic Farm and Labor here in Minnesota. And they consider themselves somewhat of a separate entity from the DNC. They try to, the DFL tries to be more progressive, and they are, but structurally they're pretty similar. And anyway, after I talked to that guy there, and some of my supporters were already in the DFL and have been, and they weren't Dem exiters, they were kind of Dem lingering honors, you know, not really sure where to go, but not really ready to just hop out. And one of the first people on my campaign, young Zach, was a director in the DFL. So the way my campaign works is I'm the non-voting chair. And what that means is everybody who wants to be a member, who believes in the cause, and who, you know, wants to be a campaign on the campaign committee is able to cast a vote for things that come up for decision. After the People's Summit, I opened it up for discussion as to whether or not we should join the Democratic primary. The committee voted yes, since there were members of the DFL in there. They thought, we know the process. It's still not the best process, trust me. I know it's not ranked choice voting. It's got super delegates still. You've got to go through 3 different voting caucuses and conventions, and it narrows down the votes. It's not the way it should be, but we believe that we have a strategy that that can get us that endorsement with the people that show up. That's what's important, is the people that show up.
So something interesting in what you had to say that I thought was worth pointing out. You have a committee of people who are helping you make these decisions, and you're not one of the voters in that committee, so that you're kind of left to what they decide. Is that kind of what you were saying? Just to clarify before I follow up.
Well, let's put it this way. As the candidate, I have the very ultimate final decision on anything. However, I don't bring anything up for discussion if I'm not willing to do it, right? So if I was absolutely unwilling to join the Democratic Party and go through all of this rigmarole with them, then I wouldn't have brought it up for discussion for the committee to vote on. But when it comes to things like hiring somebody or naming somebody as a staff member, like the campaign manager, that goes to a vote of the members. I don't just make that decision and say, hey, this is our campaign manager. The reason I'm doing that this way, and it may be a little unorthodox to people, is because I feel like they say you campaign the way you're going to lead. Well, the way I plan on leading is by listening to the people and listening to what their concerns are, giving them voice through me. That's what my responsibility will be as a representative. It's not to go up there and force my own agenda. It's to go up and to continue to represent the agenda of the constituents in this district.
All right, well, that leads me into a new question that's a little bit related to that, and that's that if you plan to represent the people, how do you plan to fund your campaign? Because those often are tied together, and I'm curious your thoughts.
And that's one of the hard ones right now. As we know, that progressives who want to walk the walk are not taking any corporate money. We're not taking any corporate big money, any of that, not taking any super PAC money. And a lot of the people that we're talking to are people that don't have money, right? That's the purpose of our campaign, is we're trying to help lift these people up in society because they're being forgotten. And, we have a local community action group that came together called CURE, Communities United for Rochester Empowerment. And it's focusing on the affordable housing crisis right now. Well, there's a $5 charge to become a member. Half the people that are fighting for this don't have, of course they waive it for them, but the idea is that most of the people that these programs and that we're fighting for, they don't have membership dues. And so what I've done is I've opened up to my larger network right now. We're vying for the Our Revolution endorsement, which hopefully will get us some notoriety throughout the progressive movement. This isn't a hugely easy place to go around and solicit donations from people. And with so many people in the race, many people aren't even giving until the endorsement.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that people would hold off until they saw who was chosen. Just for clarification for anyone who's watching, can you explain our revolution and who they came from? 2
Okay,
sentences.
our revolution was it started out as a hashtag, and then it turned into this movement through social media for Bernie Sanders. His just after the convention, I think, is when they formed it. He came out, he talked about, we're going to keep this moving. We're going to help endorse progressive candidates, whether they're independents, Greens, it doesn't matter. Democrats, I don't even know if they got any Republicans yet, but I don't know if there is a progressive Republican. So they're working on building units around the states.
And you're looking for the endorsement from someone like that. That makes a lot of sense. I would want an endorsement from them. So are you, what differentiates you from other candidates that you've heard about, and why should somebody like them or maybe another organization endorse you?
Well, first of all, I'm the only candidate here in running in this race that has any kind of progressive movement history that I'm not afraid to talk about. Meaning there are candidates who say they're progressive, but won't even say Bernie Sanders' name in a room. I'm not saying that they all have to be Bernie Sanders folks, but what they do need to realize is that Bernie Sanders won this state 61% to 34%. He won this district nearly 2-1. So
you're talking about in the primaries.
Yeah, in the primaries. If they're out there and they're carrying the same torch as the DFL, the DNC, the failed messages that were carried on through the 2015 and 16 election season, then I don't think they've got it. I don't think they understand where we're at. We're at a position right now in our political history where the generation before us is coming to a close. And I've been waiting for this for a long time because I've seen it for a long time. I understand the ruling class, and I've watched it for most of my life, and just dreaming that eventually somebody's going to wake up, something's going to happen. And I believe that's what happened in 2016. Now we have this, the woke movement. People are coming to their senses with social media and the technology we have today, even though it's not all 100% true information. And I'm against the notion that social media is responsible for losing an election. I work in that industry. I know what impressions are, and I know that they're using exaggerated numbers. Now, I'm not saying that any foreign agency should actually get involved and do those types of things. What I'm saying is that we as people on social media, we need to think. If you want to know the truth, you've got to understand that the mainstream media is only going to give you this much of the story. Depending on what channel you're on, you might get this much of the story from them on the other side. You're going to get some of the story from articles you read from that same type of media in print. And then you have to do your own investigation. You have to be an investigative journalist. And you have to turn to media, independent media outlets like yourself,
yep,
who are seeking out the truth, and then cross-reference all that conjumbled mess to finally get to the facts.
So you find yourself as a very progressive candidate, and that's great. I'm glad to hear that you are trying to differentiate yourself and you're trying to be more of a candidate for the people. That being said, some of the stuff you've already talked about has been Medicare for all, that you wouldn't be taking healthcare funding for yourself and are trying to get others to do that if you were to be elected. So one of the things I'm curious about that's connected a little bit to healthcare, and it isn't directly related to that, would be medical marijuana, or actually any type of legalization in relation to that. How do you feel about that? Because it's not only in every state that that's an issue.
No. Look, I don't, is it HR 1227? Tulsi's co-sponsored bill for the legalization of marijuana. It just needs to be done. There's no more argument really. The only thing that I believe is holding it back is the pharmaceutical companies, which is what prompted this to begin with back in the 1930s. So
yep. You're talking about the various industries. I think it was like the hemp industry and maybe a couple of others got together and tried to stop regrowable.
A year-old girl right now who may make this happen before I have a chance to get in office. She's suing Jeff Sessions for the medical marijuana use for epilepsy. I mean, this is huge. This is something that I can't understand how any politicians, especially on the D side, cannot say this has to happen now. Because for it being categorized as a Schedule 1 drug and not being able to be researched properly, and we have anecdotal research. No, we have real proof from people who are living it every day. You can call it anecdotal all you want, but when a kid is suffering through horrible, horrible seizures, and the only thing that gets them off of those seizures and gives them an opportunity to live a normal life is the chemicals within marijuana or cannabis or hemp or whatever, the strain or family that it's in, it's absolutely ridiculous that they can't get that. Yet we can charge people $600 for an EpiPen. No, there's something wrong with that.
That's a really good point. Do you have a background in this connection? I actually
in marijuana,
or not in marijuana itself, in healthcare, because you've kind of got those two tied together in your head. So I was kind of curious if that's something you're related to.
Well, I'll tell you what. I do have a history with marijuana and drugs and alcohol in my young days. First time I was given a hit of marijuana, I was 5 years old. Second time I was 6. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm pointing out that I wasn't around good adults. And that prompted me to go through a period of time in my life where self-discovery was an issue, trying to find the right answers. And I fell into drinking a lot in my 20s, and I've had to go through the processes of getting that help. So I've been through treatment. It's been 11 years since I quit drinking. And when you're in that kind of environment and you understand the realities of marijuana as opposed to even alcohol, as somebody who no longer drinks, I'm not like it's poison to me. I can sit with you at the bar. You can have a drink and we can have a discussion. I can drink orange juice or water. It doesn't bother me. I'm blessed in that way. However, I know for a fact that alcohol is not more dangerous, or that marijuana is not more dangerous than alcohol. I know that. Sociologically, I've been in college when I studied, one of my health courses was drugs use and abuse. And I figured that's an easy A, been there, done that. Well, I was actually able to learn a lot about the statistical aspects of how alcohol affects the society as a whole. And it's ridiculous. I think that if we took a more open view of how marijuana can help people rather than hinder them, and make that, this idea that it turns them into these, couch potato, Dorito eating, probably true, but that's not everybody. That's maybe teenagers, they don't know how to handle it.
I'm actually curious about that. So it's clear from your perspective that the marijuana itself and various other connections to the drug world, as you call it, don't necessarily lead to being a bad person. So next question is really clear. How do you feel about the overall positions of criminal justice? And I do have a couple of specific questions, but criminal justice reform overall, go ahead.
Okay. Well, here's my perception of that. Back in the 1990s, I was actually going to write a book called, I've always dreamt, write a novel called Corrections Survival, with surviving in the corrections system. And it's because I recognized and knew through my own interactions in that, you know, getting in trouble and stuff. I was never been to prison, but, you know, I spent some time in the county jail sitting there for doing stupid things. And you talk to people who are in prison or coming in for their court dates and stuff. And my idea of prison is that there's two separate types of prisons that need to be had. One is for absolutely the worst type of human being that's never going to be released, that's committed the worst kind of heinous crimes, and there you are. Then there's actual rehabilitation, the kind of justice system that says, okay, you've made a mistake, you're 16 years old, you got caught selling dope, which shouldn't be that big of a deal, let's, you know, but let's say it's something bad like heroin. You got caught selling drugs, and now we're going to put you away for 5-10 years, where in that system, what you're taught is how to survive more like a criminal. You're not given the tools you need to get back out into society. I've met many people that come, we got a federal prison here in our town, that come and they are, they have to try to get reacquainted with even terminology. You call somebody something and they flip out. And it's like, no, that means something totally different out here.
Okay, that makes sense. I like the idea that you have for the criminal justice in order to kind of change it to a more rehabilitative service. I've heard that a lot of times. There's always the argument that it's either justice or it's rehabilitation, and it sounds like you kind of have a balance, and that's good to know. Just a yes or no, or I mean, if you want nuance, you can, but yes or no, do you think that there should be retroactive pardons or commuting of sentences if they were to pass a bill like, did you say it was Tulsi's?
HR, yeah, absolutely. Anything, yes. If we legalize marijuana, all of those people, but we can't just say, hey, everybody, you're getting out today. We have to think this through because, again, taking into consideration the way the prison system operates right now, those people that would be eligible to get out, they need help. They need services that are going to get them back into society. But see, then that takes us into this whole social aspect of things. It's more difficult than just saying, oh yeah, just let them out. Because then you have a lot of people who don't have the skills just flooding into society all at once saying, I have no job, I have nothing waiting for me out here, I just go back to my old ways of doing things. So we want to prepare them before we let them out, but yes, they should be relieved of those charges.
All right, that makes sense. Jumping over really quick, I want to ask a couple of questions, or one question about foreign policy, and that's that I didn't notice much on your website. Now I know it's not as, a lot of people don't talk about it, especially if they're representing a local district or anything, but it would be something that would come up at some point. So interventionism, that kind of thing, where do you stand on some of the bigger issues?
Okay. We got a really, really dark history in this United States for sending our military into areas and taking over in the name of peace and then leaving them just horribly decimated, whether it's through our own actions in bombing like we did in Iraq, or whether it's from their enemies and we're trying to help them. One thing we cannot do is what the Democratic Party is currently accusing Russia of doing, is we cannot be involved in the ultimate removal of any other nation's sovereign leaders. It is up to those nations, it is up to those people to seek out help. If they're going through horrible humanitarian issues, then it's not just the United States' responsibility, but the responsibility of the people around wherever it may be to come together and say, we as a collective of humans believe that these rights are being violated of these people and we're here to help them. What we did in Libya was wrong. What we did in Iraq was wrong. The fact we're still in Afghanistan is mind-boggling. And there doesn't seem to be an end. Now, if you want to ask me why I think that's the case, it's the military-industrial complex. It's been orchestrated and perpetuated through the Pentagon and through leaders like George W. Bush since it started becoming a thing. And in our modern times, the Iraq War is the ultimate epitome of the military-industrial complex, as we see what the subcontracting of duties and responsibilities from the military were put out to contractors like Halliburton. And we know the stories. I mean, we've talked to vets, and there's been documentaries on how Halliburton was doing laundry for $99 a load, and it wasn't coming back clean, and the mess hall was always packed, and the food wasn't that good. It was like when the military stopped doing it for themselves and started subcontracting it, which to me makes absolutely no sense. I thought that's what the whole idea of the military was, is they could go in and create a civilization from nothing right then and there. For this to be part of what is happening in our military, it needs to stop. We're sending innocent young people over in the name of whatever it is. Generally, it's not for what we're over there for. And they're going under this great love and patriotism for their country, believing that what they're fighting for is freedom. And in some cases, it could be oil or a pipeline. And that's not right.
Okay, so at a national or an international level, you definitely would be less interventionist as than I guess many of the representatives, even on the Democratic side. It sounds like you would not be interested in that. So curious, at the local level, a lot of politicians have much more influence. So I'm curious, what do you do at the local level to try to create some buzz about a certain issue? Have you gone to protests? Have you helped organize different groups of people? How are you engaging the community?
Well, since I decided to kind of put my life more into the political world, I like new challenges. It's always been something I thought about. So now with being, it's the progressive time, that got my excitement up. I'm like, this is now the time for any. So since then we've been involved in different the Science March, and anytime there's anything going on downtown, I'm down there. When it comes to marching for, well, I didn't take part in the tax march. I thought that was a needless march. I'd much rather have been marching for Medicare for all, Black Lives Matter. We had the water protectors. There's over in Winona, there's issue with a line coming down there. Of course, I was, a supporter of No DAPL. I tried to put together a group to go up there, but ended up sending a friend. And currently, I'm involved with the most recent is that organization I told you, CURE, Communities United for Rochester Empowerment, where we're focusing on this horrendous affordable housing issue here in Rochester, Minnesota, because of the Mayo Clinic.
Right, that makes sense. So it sounds like you've had your hand in several different types of things, either at a smaller level or protesting or helping create advocacy in some way. Have you ever been a leader within that kind of advocacy, or has it been mostly working with others who kind of roll up to a leadership? Well,
I was until I became a candidate. It's so restrictive to be a candidate, you wouldn't believe it. In a lot of these organizations, like I was a founding member of CURE. I was on the executive or the organizing committee, which is the governing board. But after the first month, when we had built everything up and we had this huge, we had like 100 people show up at our first meeting, public meeting. I agreed to step down because we didn't want to give. The problem was almost everybody that was sitting up there was on my campaign already.
Oh no.
I mean, people get involved in the same things. I can't help it that the people on my that want to be on my campaign are also involved with helping people with affordable housing. and they want to be a part of that organization. So what we decided and what was best for that organization is that I would step down as an organizing committee member and, you know, just be a candidate. Now, the benefit from that is once it gets to be time, they do endorse candidates. So there's a probability that I can vie for their endorsement and hopefully get it. But yeah, a lot of these, like our revolution, I'm helping start the chapter down here, but I can't hold any officer positions at this point because I'm vying for the endorsement. So I can be a member, I can't be on the endorsing committee, I can't do it, you know. So really, it has been frustrating. I will tell you, I even got frustrated with Cure because I felt like I was being left out. I couldn't do anything anymore. They wouldn't let me to the meetings. You know, it's kind of hard. But it is one of the sacrifices you have to make temporarily as a candidate in order to, I guess, keep everything on the level. You know, I don't want people thinking that we're influencing an endorsement for an organization that we support as a campaign or as individuals because I happen to be on there.
So you believe that there should be a large portion of an endorsement such as that is very transparent.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you were chosen without any other notice. It would definitely not be transparent.
Right, exactly. That whole thing. That's what the argument's been with the Justice Democrats in their selection processes recently. You know, what is your process? You're taking all this money, but there's only 5 people sitting in a room choosing candidates based on 5 people's thought process.
Yeah, and it's clear that there's probably something else that goes on. I did see a couple of, I guess polls on Twitter aren't that much, but 97% of the voters had said something like, "Hey, we want more transparency from the Justice Democrats." I
Right.
definitely hear what you're saying with that. So I wanted to jump to something that I thought was a little bit interesting. Do you host viewing parties for election events?
You mean like debate?
I'll give you some context. I found a video on your website it looked like you were being interviewed at a viewing party about an election event that had recently happened, and I couldn't hear very much because of I was unable to hear all the audio, but it just was kind of interesting to me.
The Bernie one?
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay, so that was an odd thing. Yeah, it was the first Democratic debate, and we were at a local tavern, and you know, we kind of ordered it out, you know, didn't reserve it. There was other people there, but they agreed to let us come there, sit down. They had all the TVs tuned in, and it was a bunch of Bernie folks. And so we had a watch party. That's where our watch party was. And the news was there, of course, and they picked me out of the crowd. They just, "Hey, you want to talk to us?" Oh, sure. You know, I impromptu, really didn't have any inkling it was going to happen. And then you saw the segment. And then there's another segment where after the convention, I had been telling Jill Stein the whole time on Twitter that on July 29th, my birthday, the day after the convention was finalized, that if Bernie Sanders didn't walk out as the nominee, then I'd be hopping over to her campaign and helping her. And that's what I did. And through that, of course, the connection with the Green Party in the cities, they called me one day and said, "Hey, you want to go run down and do an interview?" Because I'm a good talker, you know. And so I went and I did that interview.
I enjoy that. That's very fun. It's interesting that you've had a little bit of that media interaction.
And it was all, yeah, it was not me seeking them out, knocking on, "Hey, let me be on camera." And so when I look back at that, it's kind of funny because when I look back at that, and the reason I put those, I've been trying to put them together shorter, but I put them on there because I'm not hiding the fact that I supported Jill Stein and I supported that movement and I supported the Green Party in the presidential election because it's important that we understand this system is not working. This duopoly is not working. And we proved it in 2016. And I didn't know, well, I did kind of know that I wanted to run for something. I didn't know it was going to be Congress because the seat hadn't opened. So I wasn't really focused on it. I was going to run for state seat and, you know, do something. But once we saw everything that kind of came about and that transpired in 2015 and 16, and how, you know, decisions were made for us and everything that kind of tore us down, it was more important to me than ever to stand up for what I believed in my whole life, which is this needs to change. We cannot continue to be controlled by these entities any longer.
So the House is a very high position. A lot of people would ask your credentials. And so I'm kind of curious, what made you choose the House, and what kind of background do you have that enables you to run for a position like that?
Okay, well, that's a very valid question that people ask. They want to know, what else have you run for? What else have you been, you know, why not local office first? Well, let's look at that. First of all, the actual decision-making process of being a state representative or a US representative is very similar. It's just the issues upon which you're put your focus on and the scope upon which they affect people. So you have to think a little bit bigger, right? You have to say, oh, this isn't just Minnesota. The reason I think I'm better at that is because I'm more interested in the national climate, global climate, really, you know, world peace, than I am, because Minnesota's a pretty good state. They're really a good state. They've got things really together. We don't have private prisons. We, you know, no matter what would have happened with gay marriage, if it's reversed, our state, you know, it's legal. We've got a lot of progressive things going on in the state that I just don't feel that's where the need for progressives are. Yeah, we've lost our state Senate and House, but that was thanks to 2016. There's no doubt about it. You can look at the analytics and the numbers. It's what I do for a living, and sometimes for some neurotic fun. Go through and look.
Are you a statistician, or I'm sorry?
Well, it's kind of just an off hobby. Yeah. I mean, as a web marketing consultant and developer, it's my job to do research.
Oh,
yeah. To
so
find
you do
out
research like that. Okay, that makes sense.
And so it's easy to go and start connecting the dots and seeing correlations between certain things. And when you get down into the precincts and the wards and how people feel and the energy that they had at the time, we see what happened was a lot of people didn't show up. This state, our super delegates, like I said, in that they turned their backs on us and they said, no, we're supporting this person no matter what you guys say. That kept a lot of people home. It didn't keep me home, but it kept a lot of people home. And for the seats that were not presidential, I made my decisions based on my candidates. You know, I voted for my representative here, who's a Democrat. I didn't say, oh, I'm just going to go vote for Jill Stein and then close the ballot and leave. But there were a lot of people that didn't. And there were a lot of people in this district that voted twice for Obama and once for Trump. A lot of them. And one of the farmers I work with right now, I asked him about that.
You're not the first person who I've heard say that. And there have been numerous studies that show that certain districts did do that because Obama came across more of a populist. And for what he's worth, Trump did the language. It sounded like he was coming across as a populist. So I can understand where you're getting, where that would have happened and why it would have happened in your district. Johnny, it's actually been really good talking to you, and I actually like to let you go ahead and finish up. You're a really genuine, great person to talk to. I like your ideas, and I like the things that you've brought up during our conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to add or bring up? I'd love to let you plug your website or anything like that.
Well, yeah, that's just it. You know, one of the things that we want to encourage people to do is if you feel that you want to support candidates, go to their websites and try to give directly to the candidates. That's the first thing you can do. And the other thing to realize is that progressives are going to need financial support. There's just no way around it. We cannot get around big districts driving around. We need gas. We need literature. We're only taking small donations. If enough progressives come together, if 1,000 people said, hey, here's $5, that is such a huge help to a House candidate in a district that they're not getting any kind of, there's, for our race, really, the holdback for a lot of people is the fact there's so many candidates. So they don't want to choose sides. They want to wait for the endorsement. The candidates who do have money have taken corporate money, have taken money from other areas that they lived at, that they no longer should be representing. And a lot of our money may come from little small donations around the progressive movement.
Do you think you can get 1,000 donations of $5?
Well, that depends on how much you share this video.
We'll definitely help share it so that you can get your message out.
So the website is myname.com, so johnnyakzam.com, or if you can't remember that, just remember Johnny Progress. We're going to turn that into a comic strip. I guarantee it. That's my goal. I want to find, if you know anybody who's a cartoonist who wants to do this, we want to create a character. It's not going to be based off me. I'm not that, narcissistic. But Johnny Progress is going to be this political superhero who comes in with progressive values and shares and saves the day. And I was thinking it'd be just great to have a cartoonist putting those things out and, give people, especially millennials, young people, something to kind of follow along, maybe a little satire, and to keep it real though. It's not just about jokes, but to maybe utilize that kind of a platform to get the message out even further. I think it would be fun, and I know that there's enough talented young people out there that would love to jump on something like that.
Well, maybe if you can get a volunteer from your website to do it, then you can put something like that together. So your website is your first dot last name. First dot last name. Can you just say that and spell it really quick? So
it's Johnny, JohnnyAkzam.com.
Sounds good. Hey, Johnny, thank you very much for your time, and thanks for having a conversation with us. It was really great to have you here on the Independent Progressive. Again, I'm Aaron Albritton, and we look forward to having more candidates come in and have conversations with us so that the candidates can be more accessible to the people they're going to represent.